Going on a walk or hiking through the woods seems like a good time until it's not. Many of us know the dangers of walking or even being near the woods. Here are 3 chilling tales that happened in forests. I had a summer job when I was a 15-year-old girl that was a few miles from my house. I lived in a rural wooded area, and my parents never let me go into the woods by myself. But they worked days, and my job started at noon every day, so I had to walk to work. I chose to disobey them and walk through the woods instead of on the road to work because it cut about a mile off of my walk. So every day, at the same time, I'd walk through the very much abandoned state forest down a deer path for a mile or so until it intercepted a railroad track. Then I'd walk a couple more miles down the railroad tracks into town to my job. Stupid, I know, but I was 15. Taking this path always freaked me out, and I felt like I was being watched. But it was shorter and less sunny and hot, so I ignored my instincts, thinking my parents' influence was just making me paranoid. My parents would pick me up after my shift, unaware of my daily routine. This continued for weeks. One day, I'm walking about a mile from any houses, deep in the woods, and there were 2 porn magazine pages that had been ripped out and placed on the trail facing me. They hadn't been there the day before. I was completely creeped out, as they were clearly intentionally placed, and probably for me, since very few people utilized this area. But I kept walking, because if I turned around at this point, I'd have further to go to get out of the woods, and then there was a huge hill to climb to get back to my house, and no one would be around there to help me anyway. This was a densely wooded area with brambles and dogwood and rolling hills, so I couldn't see very far in any direction. Suddenly, I could hear someone else walking close by. I stopped, and I would hear them for a split second, and then they would stop. They sounded like they had change in their pocket, so I knew it wasn't an animal. But because of the echo, I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Just to check that I wasn't crazy, I stopped once more and heard the same noise, which quickly stopped when I stopped. That's when I knew I was being stalked. My heart was racing with fear, and my vision went blurry, but my instincts told me not to speak and not to run, but just keep walking down the dense deer path further into the woods. My gut told me not to look behind me. I could sense there was someone right behind me on the deer path now, but I did not look back. Now, I'm a rather short, slightly chubby person, always have been, and looking at me, you'd probably assume that I couldn't run very fast. So if you wanted to catch me deep in the woods, you might assume you had plenty of time to do so. And looking back, I think that is exactly what this creep was thinking. But back then, I ran cross country and track, and could run a 7-minute mile, and hills were my specialty. I always placed really well on hilly terrain. By no means was I a great runner, but certainly I was likely faster than whatever pedo creep was hanging out in the woods stalking a little girl. It's not that I was processing this thought at the time, I just instinctually knew not to run. Yet. I kept walking, seemingly deeper into the woods, because I knew the train track was up ahead, where there would be more space to run without tripping or getting caught in the tree branches. It was terrifying to not look back, but something told me not to. While I walked, I felt like my entire body was shutting down. It's a feeling I've never felt before or after that day. It was the feeling of being prey. Everything went blurry, and I could feel blood pulsing in my ears, and my heart was pounding. I just kept walking, like nothing was happening, and did not turn around but I could feel someone maybe 5 or 10 feet behind me at this point, following me for a good eighth of a mile. I didn't turn around. I didn't scream because I knew no one would hear me. As soon as I got near the train tracks, which were elevated along a man-made gravel mound, I ran. And then I ran on all fours, up the hill, gripping on the weeds to pull myself up faster. And then I sprinted along the tracks as fast as my lungs and legs could carry me. I heard and saw branches snapping below me in the woods, but now I was out in the sun, and the woods were dark, so I couldn't see what was behind the branches. I just kept sprinting. I never even saw the person, but I knew their intentions were awful. I never cut through the woods again, and I didn't mention what happened to my parents until I was 18 and had moved out of the house. I was too afraid of being grounded. This happened to me years ago. Still seems like yesterday. I was driving with my girlfriend to her parents' house to celebrate her father's birthday. Mind you, the trip from where I live to her parents is a 6-hour drive. We packed things up, gifts, and some other small stuff, and we were ready to go. The journey at the beginning was fine, not much traffic. It was very nice weather, considering it was the start of the spring. Then, out of nowhere, I got a flat tire. Not a problem. I'm a handy guy, and I replaced it, but it took a while, and the evening was approaching. I was driving using Google Maps. The road I was traveling on was new to me. My girlfriend started napping and said to wake her up when we were going to be close. I said okay. She was working long hours the day before. Google Maps was showing the road through the woods. I had suspicion that maybe the map was not showing the right way, because from time to time, Google does do that. Changes the direction out of nowhere, that kind of thing. When I reached the forest, I stumbled across a small parking lot. It was very old, and it seemed like nobody really used it. Patches of grass were uncut, and the road to the park was full of holes. And surprise, surprise, Google changed the direction. I stopped in the parking lot. There was nobody around. I turned off the engine, but left the headlights on. I was checking my phone for new directions, and didn't really pay attention to what was going on around me. But just then, I saw 3 men in front of my car, very close. They were approaching stealthily, and they were coming toward my car. I turned on the engine, put the car in reverse, and was driving as fast as I could. As I was backing away, I saw the face of one of the men. It was creepy. He had no real emotion, no anger, but his eyes said it all. He had evil intentions. My girlfriend woke up, and she started asking what I was doing. I said to her that someone was chasing us. Apparently, I screamed and was shaking while driving, so she knew I wasn't messing around. I didn't care where. I wanted to escape this forest as soon as possible. I was looking at my mirror every 10 minutes. That was the creepiest thing that happened in my life. I didn't know who those men were. This story is told from the perspective of a female. So this happened right before my 20th birthday, when I was in the U.S. Navy. I was stationed at a naval school in South Carolina the entirety of my enlistment, close to Charleston, but not actually in the city. It wasn't uncommon for people with cars to drive into the city, and everyone was friends with someone with a car. Me and my class leader, who's a 22-year-old male, we'll call him P, were really close, and he was friends with this New Yorker, who's a 19-year-old male, that I didn't much like. We'll call him T. But T had a car, so we ended up doing a lot together. One night, after all 3 of us had tanked an important test, I convinced them to go for ice cream. We decided on this little mom and pop style shop on the far side of Charleston and piled into T's truck. After we had gotten our ice cream, P went to start giving T directions. T couldn't find his way out of a shoebox, but T insisted he knew a shortcut and we needed to just enjoy the ride. We didn't have anything early the next day, so I figured, F it. This will probably be a funny story later when T gets us lost. So we're driving for at least twice as long as it would have taken to get back to base. But T keeps promising we're almost there. Meanwhile, we haven't seen a building in at least 10 miles, and the road is so dark, I feel like I'm looking into the abyss. T mentions that he has to pee, so P and I tell him to just pull over and take a leak. The road was lined with forest, so we had options to save his dignity, but he insists on pulling all the way off the road. So T finds a dirt road and turns down it, and P and I look at each other and both say he needs to stop. P and I are both from the South, while T grew up in mostly New York City. So P and I knew how real shoot first, ask questions later can be. But T kept saying he was just going to go a little further through the trees. I'm thinking about how we're going to get shot because I wanted ice cream, and then we broke through the tree line. About 20 yards in front of us was a big bonfire that was bright compared to the light from the new moon. Immediately, my stomach dropped, and P and I both started screaming at T to turn around. That's when we noticed the figures around the fire and those closing in around us. T was frozen in the driver's seat, so I reached into the front and put the truck in reverse while hitting him repeatedly in the shoulder. T slowly turned around to check behind him, to back up, only to freeze again. I turned and saw more figures closing around the trail behind us. P, by now, had pulled out a flashlight and was trying to blind the figures while repeatedly telling T to just go and that they'd move. So T starts to slowly make his way back while P's whipping his flashlight around, and I'm making sure all the doors are locked and rolling up the rear windows and closing the back sliding window. The crowd parted like we were Moses and they were the Red Sea, and we made it back onto the road without any other problems. We rode the rest of the ride in almost complete silence, and the three of us have never actually spoken about it since. The only thing that was said on the ride home was when P turned to me and said, "They didn't have faces."